Hello, how are you all doing today? I hope you're always healthy and in high spirits. Get ready because this time I am bringing you a story that will test your emotions and make your heart race. This is the story of Audrey, a wife who for a long time has been belittled and underestimated by her own husband. You will witness how her husband's mistress arrogantly shows off a luxury designer bag while throwing a hurtful jab. Your husband bought me this because I am much more valuable than you. However, that haughty mistress has no idea that all of her lover's extravagant lifestyle relies entirely on Audrey's fortune. When Audrey's patience finally runs out, she simply smiles and takes immediate legal action. What happens when her husband's personal ATM is completely shut down and a divorce petition is served? Before we begin, please support my story channel. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of our other thrilling stories. And now I want to know who is ready. Comment down below. Drop your name, your home city, and the word here. Let's get started. That morning, the air in Beverly Hills, California felt especially light, at least for Audrey. She was sitting quietly on the patio of a high-end cafe just off Rodeo Drive, sipping her artisanal latte accompanied by her best friend Harper. In her early 30s, Audrey radiated the serene aura of a woman who is in total control of her life. Her outfit was simple, yet incredibly elegant, reflecting expensive taste, without the need for flashy logos. She was the secret owner of a sprawling network of real estate and fabulously valuable assets, all discreetly managed by her right-hand man, Mr. Caldwell. She kept her wealth under wraps to maintain her privacy and avoid unnecessary conflicts of interest, especially with her husband, Gavin. Gavin knew his wife came from a comfortable background, but he had never truly grasped the immense depth of Audrey's wealth. Gavin himself, in the eyes of the public, and even to his mother Barbara, was a highly successful corporate executive. In reality, he was just a mid-level director at a company that was actually owned by Audrey, earning a decent but standard salary. However, every single one of his luxurious perks, from the Mercedes G-Wagon and the massive mansion to the platinum credit card, was funded entirely by Audrey's secret accounts. Audrey and Harper were deep in discussion about a new business expansion plan when a striking silhouette approached. The woman, none other than Brittany, headed straight for their table. Brittany was a woman with boundless ambition and an overflowing sense of self-confidence, especially when backed by expensive accessories. That day, she was glowing in a designer outfit and most noticeably a newly released limited edition luxury handbag. Audrey recognized her immediately. Brittany, her husband's shameless mistress. Brittany stopped right next to Audrey's table with a triumphant look on her face, acting as if the cafe were her personal stage. She deliberately placed her luxury bag on the table right between Audrey and Harper's coffee cups. Harper scoffed in annoyance, but Audrey maintained a faint, polite smile. She knew this drama was bound to happen, and had already prepared herself for this irritating charade. "Oh, hi, Audrey! What a coincidence running into you here," Brittany greeted. Her tone was falsely sweet, but laced with a sharp edge of superiority. She stroked her bag with a possessive gesture. "I just came from the boutique. Gavin insisted on buying this for me as a surprise gift. He says it suits me perfectly, that it reflects my new taste and class." Harper almost choked on her latte, but Audrey quickly grabbed her friend's hand, signaling her to stay calm. Audrey looked at Brittany with an unreadable expression. There was a bit of pity in her eyes, but mostly it was just sheer boredom. Brittany, failing to provoke the dramatic reaction she was hoping for, decided to cut straight to the chase. She leaned her face a little closer to Audrey's, making sure her words sounded loud, clear, and painful. "Your husband bought me this because I am much more valuable than you. He says I'm the one who makes him feel alive like a real man. You know, someone who can actually appreciate his exquisite taste." Brittany smiled broadly, a smile that was meant to shatter Audrey into pieces. However, the exact opposite happened. Audrey's smile widened, transforming into a serene, elegant, and icy grin. It was a smile that Brittany couldn't comprehend at all. Behind that smile, Audrey was doing the math. She calculated exactly how many zeros had to leave her account, an account in her name, to fund the luxury bag currently being paraded in front of her. Gavin had spent Audrey's money to buy a gift for Brittany, his mistress. The irony was so thick that Audrey could almost cut it with a knife. "Oh, really?" Audrey replied softly, her voice perfectly calm and controlled. "That's wonderful, Brittany. I'm glad to know Gavin is so generous with the people who, according to him, deserve it." Audrey picked up a linen napkin and casually brushed away some pastry crumbs right next to Brittany's bag, treating the expensive item like a piece of clutter blocking her view. "I hope you enjoy your new bag, because the budget for irrelevant things needs to be spent quickly. Otherwise, it would be a waste, wouldn't it?" Audrey's overly relaxed response left Brittany confused and deeply annoyed. Brittany had expected tears, screaming, or at least a grimace of jealousy, but all she got was a flat, condescending stare. Feeling that her mission had failed, Brittany straightened up, trying to hide her irritation behind an elegant pose. "Of course, Audrey. I'll see you around. Oh, and give my best to Barbara, your sweet mother-in-law." Brittany emphasized the words, "your mother-in-law," as if it were a crown she had stolen from Audrey. As soon as Brittany strutted away confidently, Harper grabbed Audrey's arm. "Are you crazy? How can you be so calm? That girl is showing off a bag paid for with your husband's money, a trophy of his cheating right in front of your face." Audrey shook her head slowly. Her smile vanished, replaced by a sharp, calculating glare. "That's exactly the point, Harper. She says Gavin bought it for her, but she has no idea that Gavin can't even afford a pair of socks without my money. That bag, whether he realizes it or not, was bought with a supplementary credit card tied directly to my personal account, an account I keep completely separate and use exclusively to fund Gavin's lavish lifestyle." Harper was utterly stunned. "Are you saying you paid for his mistress's bag?" "Exactly," Audrey said. "Gavin has always prided himself on his status as a successful corporate executive, but he's nothing more than a director with a standard salary at the holding company Mr. Caldwell and I founded 5 years ago, long before we ever got married. He lives off my wealth and my social status. He thinks I don't know. He thinks he's so smart hiding Brittany, but I know absolutely everything. All this time, I've just given him an illusion of freedom. A very long leash, so he'd feel like he was in control. But today, he crossed the line. He allowed Brittany to come here and humiliate me using my own money." Harper finally understood the sheer complexity of the game Audrey was playing. "So, what's your plan?" "The divorce petition is just a formality," Audrey replied as she pulled out her smartphone. She opened her mobile banking app and several encrypted digital documents. "I'm not just going to divorce him. I'm going to take everything back. He has already made his choice. He thinks Brittany is much more valuable than me. Fine. Let him live with that highly valuable woman, without the luxury, without the assets, without the big name, and without a single red cent of my money." Audrey then sent a brief text message to Mr. Caldwell, her trusted attorney. The message contained a single firm and definitive instruction: execute the total cleanup plan. Now, start by freezing all access to funds and credit cards in Gavin's name. For Audrey, Brittany's boasting wasn't a humiliation. It was the starting gun for a clean, efficient, and lethal revenge. The real game had just begun, and Audrey was the house holding all the winning cards. She knew that in no time, Brittany's arrogant face would be replaced by panic, and Gavin's smug pride would turn into dead pallor. "I just smiled because he doesn't know that he lives off my fortune," Audrey whispered to Harper with that cold smile returning to her lips. "It's time to clean up my assets and clean up my life." Audrey stood up. She had far more important things to do than waste time thinking about a cheap mistress and a luxury bag bought on credit. Audrey and Harper left the cafe. Even though Audrey looked perfectly calm, her footsteps now carried the weight of an unshakable determination. On the drive back to her estate, Audrey's mind wandered to the past, to the beginning of her marriage with Gavin 3 years ago. Back then, Gavin was a junior manager at an investment bank, a promising position, but his salary clearly didn't match the opulent lifestyle he craved and constantly flaunted to his mother, Barbara, and his colleagues. Audrey, on the other hand, came from old money, having inherited a vast network of businesses and hidden assets. To avoid media attention and protect her family's estate from ulterior motives, Audrey chose to manage her empire in absolute secrecy. When Gavin proposed to her, Audrey already had a gut feeling that he was more interested in the lifestyle she could provide than in her as a person. However, she believed there was a small spark of sincerity in him at the time. To test him and simultaneously control the situation, Audrey, with the help of Mr. Caldwell, drafted an incredibly strict and confidential prenuptial agreement. The agreement ensured that all assets Audrey owned prior to the marriage and those managed through her secret holding company would remain her exclusive property, entirely separate from any marital assets. Blinded by Audrey's promise to give him a chance to direct one of her company's subsidiaries, Gavin signed it, without a second thought. The automatic gates of her sprawling Beverly Hills mansion opened. The house, which Gavin believed belonged to both of them, had actually been bought in cash by Audrey a year before the wedding and was registered under her LLC. Every single lease payment for the luxury cars, the monthly bills for their extravagant vacations, and the generous monthly allowance sent to his mother, Barbara, were covered by Audrey through clever, structured wire transfers that made Gavin feel like he was the one footing the bill. It was a gilded cage Audrey had built, and Gavin had walked right into it with his chest puffed out. Audrey walked into her home office, a room that was always locked and strictly off limits to everyone but her. There, sitting behind a massive, expensive mahogany desk, She contacted Mr. Caldwell via an encrypted video call. Mr. Caldwell was a razor-sharp attorney in his 50s, with impeccable integrity and absolute loyalty to Audrey's family. Mr. Caldwell, what's the status on my earlier instructions? Audrey asked bluntly. They have already been executed, Miss Audrey. Mr. Caldwell responded in his crisp, professional tone. All supplementary credit cards linked to your personal accounts have been permanently frozen. The daily transfer limit to Mr. Gavin's personal checking account has been reduced to 0. He now only has access to his standard monthly salary. Audrey nodded, her gaze piercing. Good. Also, make sure that all the corporate perks he uses, like the company gas card, the expense account, and the chauffeur service, are gradually deactivated over the next 2 days. Make it look like a sudden corporate efficiency policy. Understood, ma'am. The divorce papers are ready on your desk. They just require your signature. I've also prepared a specialized team to immediately handle the repossession of all movable assets registered under Mr. Gavin's name. As you know, those assets were legally purchased with your company's funds under an authorized use agreement. Audrey picked up a gold fountain pen from her desk. Perfect, Mr. Caldwell. I want this process to be fast and surgically clean. I've let this game drag on for way too long. Suddenly, someone pounded impatiently on Audrey's office door. It had to be Gavin. Audrey signaled to Mr. Caldwell that she would call him back and cut the feed. Gavin barged in without waiting for permission. His demeanor had completely shifted. The face that had looked so calm and energetic that morning was now flushed with confusion and brewing anger. He waved his smartphone in the air. Audrey, what the hell is this? My platinum card was just declined out of nowhere. I can't use it for anything. I was taking a very important client out to lunch, and I was almost totally humiliated in front of them. Did you do this on purpose? Gavin demanded, his voice rising an octave. Audrey leaned back in her leather chair, feigning a look of mild surprise. Declined. Why would that happen, honey? I haven't done anything. Don't play dumb. You're the only one who knows all the account numbers, Gavin yelled. It's so weird. I tried to wire funds from my personal account to cover the bill, and my transfer limit is at 0. Did you forget to pay a bank fee or something? The arrogant, chivalrous Gavin had completely morphed into a panicked man who had just lost his lifeblood. He had no idea he had just lost all his financial control in a fraction of a second. Audrey stood up slowly and walked over to Gavin. I haven't forgotten to pay anything, darling. In fact, I just settled some very large bills. Audrey picked up the divorce petition from her desk and placed it right into Gavin's trembling hand. Gavin stared at the document in sheer confusion, then read the bold title on the first page. Petition for dissolution of marriage. His blood turned to ice. What is this, Audrey? This is a joke, right? His voice dropped, suddenly laced with genuine fear. Do I look like I'm joking, Gavin? Audrey asked coldly. We're getting a divorce. Enough is enough. I'm tired of this pathetic charade. What charade? Why? So suddenly, is this about Brittany? I can explain, Audrey. She's just a fling, a business associate. Gavin reached for Audrey's hand, but she swatted it away like a pesky fly. Do not say her name and do not try to lie to me anymore, Audrey snapped. Her tone radiated an absolute authority that Gavin had never heard before. I know everything, Gavin. Absolutely everything. And if you want to know why your platinum card is blocked and why the transfers to your account have stopped, it's because all that money is mine. It's not yours. It never was. Gavin's face drained of color. A volatile mix of shock, rage, and terror washed over him. What do you mean? What the hell are you talking about? Listen to me very closely, Gavin, Audrey said, standing tall and imposing in front of her husband. The company you work for, this Beverly Hills mansion, your luxury cars, the platinum credit card you love to flash around, every single bit of it is funded and legally owned by my holding company. All this time, you have just been a parasite, leeching off my wealth and my status. I know you're cheating on me. I know you've been flying Brittany all over the world using my money. And I know you even bought her that ridiculously overpriced designer bag today using my corporate operating funds. Gavin stumbled backward, completely speechless. All the arrogance he had built up over 3 years shattered into a million pieces. And just as a friendly reminder, Audrey continued pulling the prenuptial agreement from a sleek folder. This agreement you signed strictly separates all my assets from your property. You have 0 right to anything. Even the salary you've been collecting comes directly from a corporate account that I completely control. Gavin felt his entire world collapsing. His mind instantly flew to his mother, Barbara. Barbara had been arrogantly blowing through cash, totally dependent on the hefty monthly transfers from her highly successful son. If Gavin had no money, Barbara was going down with him. No, Audrey, please, you can't do this. What about my mother? She has medical bills. She needs money for her treatments. Gavin began to beg, panic, fully taking over. Audrey stared right through him. She is your mother. She is your responsibility. All this time, she has actively participated in humiliating me and constantly comparing me to other women. She called me cheap and said I didn't know how to run a proper household. Well, now this is the direct consequence of all your lies and both of your arrogance. Audrey turned around and picked up her phone. You have exactly 2 options now. Either you sign these divorce papers right this second, or we take this to open court and I will personally make sure the entire world knows that the successful corporate executive Gavin is nothing but a fraud who lives off his wife and steals her money to fund his affairs. Think about it. Choose wisely, Gavin. Gavin's face was chalk white. In his blinding panic, he could only grip the divorce papers in his hand, painfully aware that he had completely lost the second round of a game he didn't even know he was playing. He had plummeted from the throne of luxury straight into the abyss of poverty in a matter of minutes. And the absolute judge of his fate was his own wife, the woman he had consistently looked down upon. Gavin stood frozen in Audrey's office, his body paralyzed not just by shock but by the bitter reality bludgeoning him. The entire splendor of his life was an elaborate illusion. The divorce petition in his hand felt like a death sentence. His mind raced at full speed, desperately searching for a loophole, a piece of evidence, or even simple rhetoric to refute Audrey's claims. But all his efforts were useless. The prenuptial agreement that he had casually brushed off as a mere formality was now a steel noose tightening around his neck. He didn't even remember reading the fine print of such a detailed document. At the time, his eyes had been fixated solely on Audrey's promise to give him a cushy director position and unlimited access to the lifestyle of his wildest dreams. No, you can't do this, Gavin whispered, his voice cracking. We're married. You can't just strip me of everything like this. I am your husband. Audrey looked at him with glacial coldness. We got married on a foundation of lies, Gavin. You married my lifestyle, not me. And I'm not stripping you of everything just like that. I am simply taking back what is legally and rightfully mine. You heard me. Sign those papers or we will see each other in court and you can explain to a judge exactly why the successful Gavin had to buy a designer handbag for his mistress using his own wife's corporate credit card. Gavin knew Audrey wasn't bluffing. His reputation built with such desperate effort, albeit on borrowed foundations, would be pulverized. Not just in front of his colleagues, but also in front of his mother, Barbara, who valued social status and appearances above oxygen itself. Gavin's greatest terror was imagining his mother discovering that the son she bragged about so endlessly was nothing more than a glorified beggar in a tailored suit. I need time. I have to talk to my mother, Gavin pleaded, grasping for any excuse to delay the inevitable. You have 24 hours to process all of this, Audrey replied with lethal firmness. After that, Mr. Caldwell will come by to collect the signed papers. If they aren't signed, the legal process will proceed exactly as I've planned. Audrey walked over to the heavy oak door and pulled it open. Get out of my office, Gavin. I do not want to see your face again until we meet at the negotiation table. Gavin walked out with trembling steps. The massive mansion that he had considered his kingdom for so long now felt alien, cold, and hostile. He immediately grabbed his phone not to call Brittany but his mother Barbara. Meanwhile, Audrey immediately called Mr. Caldwell back. Mr. Caldwell, Gavin knows everything. The accelerated asset repossession process begins right now. Understood, ma'am, Mr. Caldwell replied. Our team is already mobilized. The Mercedes G-Wagon he drives will be repossessed tonight. The official reason on paper will be an urgent technical recall from the leasing company. The exact same protocol will apply to the luxury SUV Mrs. Barbara uses back in her hometown, even though she rarely drives it. It will be repossessed tomorrow morning. Everything falls strictly under your corporate use agreement. Perfect. And as for Barbara's checking account, freeze the fund transfers completely effective immediately. Make sure all notifications for her monthly allowance show up as failed or held for sudden internal audit, Audrey instructed. She knew it sounded cruel to do this to Barbara, but the older woman had been the primary architect of so many of the verbal humiliations Audrey had endured over the years. Barbara fully deserved to feel the crushing financial consequences of her son's arrogance. Across town, Gavin arrived at his small, dingy apartment, the one he had secretly kept since before he got married, specifically to host his affairs. As expected, he called Barbara, who answered the phone in her usual entitled whining tone. Gavin, darling, I just got off the phone with my regular boutique downtown. They told me Audrey blocked your credit card. What is going on, sweetie? Don't worry. I told them to just keep charging my purchases to your account. We absolutely cannot let these people think we're poor, Barbara rambled on. Hearing this, Gavin could only let out a heavy, defeated sigh. Mom, listen to me carefully. We have a massive problem. Gavin rapidly explained the entire situation, desperately trying to minimize his own guilt and shift all the blame onto Audrey. He told her about the divorce petition and, most devastatingly, the horrifying reality that all of his wealth, the mansion, the luxury cars, and even the allowance he sent her every month belonged 100% to Audrey. Are you playing a sick joke on me, Gavin? That is impossible. My son is a highly successful executive. Audrey is just some plain woman who puts on airs. This has to be an evil scheme of hers to steal your hard-earned fortune, Barbara screamed through the phone. All this time, Barbara had been thoroughly convinced that Gavin paid for everything since his name was on the caller ID whenever the bank called. No, Mom, it's the truth, Gavin choked out. I've seen the corporate documents myself. Even the SUV you drive is registered to Audrey's holding company. We are in so much trouble, Mom. If I divorce her, we are left with absolutely nothing. We have to figure out a way to convince her to drop the divorce. That night, absolute panic and dread consumed Gavin. Shortly after that phone call, while he was pacing in his crappy apartment, 2 men in crisp suits, repo agents managed by Mr. Caldwell's firm, arrived. Politely but firmly, they demanded the keys to the Mercedes. Gavin tried to argue, but they flashed a rock-solid, legally binding repossession order under Audrey's company name. Gavin felt humiliated and violently angry. He could only watch as his luxury G-Wagon, the ultimate symbol of his fake status, was towed away into the dead of night. The next morning, the panic reached a boiling point when Barbara called Gavin again. Her voice was trembling with sheer rage and desperation. Gavin, the transfer that always hits my account today completely failed. I tried checking it at the ATM and it just says funds held. What the hell is this? I have to pay for my monthly medications and the landscaping bill. It's Audrey, Mom. She actually did it. She blocked everything. She's evil, Mom. She wants us to rot in the streets, Gavin cried out, the voice of a broken man. You need to go back to that house right this second. Beg for her forgiveness. Kiss her damn feet if you have to. We cannot fall into poverty. I absolutely refuse to live without money. Hurry up, Gavin, do it now. Or I swear to God I will fly out to California and march into that house to give her a piece of my mind myself, Barbara threatened. Gavin knew he couldn't let his mother fly out. The arrogant, hot-headed Barbara would only throw gasoline on the fire. In a state of pure desperation, Gavin sent a massive text message to Audrey. It was a long, pathetic paragraph filled with fake apologies, empty promises, and dramatic oaths about how much he truly loved her and not her money. Gavin was desperately trying to play the role of the remorseful, heartbroken husband. Audrey, who was currently enjoying her morning espresso while reviewing her latest financial portfolio, merely skimmed the message. She smirked, a smile of total victory. Gavin was entirely in the palm of her hand. She didn't reply to him. Instead, Audrey sent a text message to Brittany. It was a short text containing only one sentence and a PDF attachment. The sentence read, "I have made the best decision for my marriage. Contact Gavin if you want to know what happens to your new bag." The attachment was a scanned copy of the unsigned divorce petition. Audrey knew exactly what Brittany would do the second she laid eyes on those divorce papers. Brittany didn't give a damn about Gavin as a person. Brittany only cared about the cash flow and the luxury lifestyle. As soon as Brittany realized that the source of Gavin's wealth was about to dry up entirely, she would react explosively. And Brittany's reaction would become a boomerang that would smash into Gavin with double the force. Audrey locked her phone and calmly finished her espresso. She had successfully triggered a chain reaction of panic. Gavin was panicking over losing his safety net. Barbara was panicking over losing her social standing. And Brittany was about to panic over massive financial liability. The dominoes were falling perfectly. After firing off the divorce petition to Brittany, Audrey went about her day as if nothing had happened. For her, it was a brilliant tactical move. She knew that Brittany, highly motivated by greed and status, would be far more effective at mentally torturing Gavin than Audrey ever could be. Audrey calculated that in less than an hour, Gavin's personal hell would officially begin delivered not by his wife, but by his mistress. And her prediction was spot on. Not even 30 minutes had passed when Gavin's phone started blowing up. The calls weren't from the corporate office or important clients. They were from Brittany's number. Gavin, who was sitting paralyzed on the cheap sofa in his cramped apartment, answered reluctantly. He desperately hoped Brittany would offer him some emotional comfort. He was dead wrong. "Gavin, what the hell is this? What does this divorce petition from your wife mean?" Brittany's voice was shrill and ear-piercing, a million miles away from the sweet, breathy tone she usually used. Gavin tried to do damage control. "Calm down, babe. It's just a hollow threat. Audrey is just throwing a tantrum. I'll fix it, I swear. Don't worry about it." "Don't worry about it!" Brittany shrieked, practically hysterical. I know how you operate. If this was just a tantrum, why the hell did my credit card just get declined? I literally just tried to pay the invoice at the boutique for my new bag and it bounced. Tell me right now, Gavin, what the hell is going on with your money? Do not tell me all your wealth is just a giant scam. Brittany, who had firmly believed Gavin was a fabulously wealthy tycoon, suddenly felt the icy grip of financial ruin. The luxury bag she had flaunted so proudly in front of Audrey turned out to be completely unpaid for. And now, the supplementary credit card Gavin had given her, the one he swore was tied to his personal fortune, was a dead piece of plastic. Brittany realized with horror that she was now personally on the hook for an exorbitant designer item she had bought under the assumption that her sugar daddy was covering the tab. "I'll handle it, Brittany. Just hold on, don't panic," Gavin yelled back into the phone. "It's just a technical glitch. Audrey only put a temporary freeze on it. I'll get the access back, I promise." "I'm not an idiot. Gavin Audrey sent me the actual divorce papers and a text telling me to ask you about the bag. She knows absolutely everything, so you better explain this to me right now." "Are you seriously getting divorced and losing your entire fortune?" Brittany demanded, ruthlessly. "If you're broke, how the hell are you going to pay the rent on my apartment or my spa treatments and, most importantly, the massive debt for this damn bag?" The confrontation was nothing like Gavin had envisioned. He had hoped Brittany would be his safe haven, but instead she transformed into a hurricane, tearing away the last shreds of his dignity. Brittany literally only cared about the money. Cornered Gavin finally choked out the bitter truth. He admitted that every ounce of the wealth he had been flaunting actually belonged to Audrey, and that Audrey had just nuked his entire life. He begged Brittany to stay by his side, swearing up and down that he would find a way to get the money back. Brittany let out a loud, cynical laugh, a laugh that chilled Gavin straight to the bone. "What kind of idiot do you take me for, Gavin? I am with you because you are rich, because you could give me a better lifestyle than your boring plain wife. And now you're telling me you're broke. No thanks. I absolutely refuse to be with a deadbeat who leeches off his wife. I am way too valuable for a nobody like you." Brittany's words were the exact same ones she had spat at Audrey in the cafe, but this time, the venom was aimed directly at Gavin. Gavin felt like he had been struck by a freight train. Just yesterday, he had looked down on Audrey. Now he was being looked down upon and discarded like trash by the woman he claimed was more valuable. Brittany slammed the phone down, and Gavin stared at the blank screen, fully realizing that he had lost absolutely everything in under 24 hours. His wife, his fortune, and his mistress. Then Barbara called him again. After the wire transfer failed, Barbara had tried to withdraw cash from her personal debit card to scrape by, but she could only pull out a tiny pathetic amount, what was left of Gavin's actual standard paycheck. She didn't have nearly enough to cover her bills. "Gavin, you need to get your ass back to that mansion right now and get on your knees in front of Audrey. I just got a call from that arrogant old man, Caldwell. He told me the luxury SUV you lent me is being repossessed tomorrow morning. He claims it's company property. You have to stop. This son, I cannot be humiliated in front of the whole neighborhood. I am a respectable widow," Barbara wailed into the phone. Gavin felt completely trapped. He knew his absolute only way out was to face Audrey in person. He drove back to the sprawling Beverly Hills estate, but he didn't dare walk through the front door. He used a spare key he had hidden under a planter in the garden and snuck in through the back door, praying he could corner Audrey without Mr. Caldwell or security interfering. He found her sitting calmly in the massive, sunlit living room, leisurely reading a novel. On the glass coffee table right in front of her sat the divorce papers. "Audrey." Gavin called out, his voice now entirely stripped of pride, replaced by raw desperation. Audrey slowly looked up, her eyes like absolute glaciers. "I told you, Gavin. 24 hours. Have you reached your limit? Please, Audrey, I am begging you." Gavin actually dropped to his knees right there on the imported rug. It was the single most humiliating moment of his entire existence. "I promise I'll change. I'll cut Brittany off completely. I'll be the perfect husband. I will never cross you again. Please don't take everything away from me. And what about my mom? She has a heart condition, Audrey. If she finds out the full truth about all this, the stress could literally kill her." Gavin deployed his mother as his ultimate desperate weapon. Audrey snapped her book shut with a sharp thud. She leaned forward, her eyes locking onto Gavin like a predator. "Do not dare drag your mother into your pathetic mess," Gavin Audrey said, her tone low, terrifying, and absolute. "I know you're using her as a human shield. I know you exploit her. And let's get one thing straight, all this time, your mother has been the one insulting me the most. She said I was a failure as a wife. She said I wasn't worthy of being her daughter-in-law. She bragged about how I wasn't as successful as the other wives in her circle. She constantly demanded a bigger house, a flashier car, and more expensive vacations. And all of it Gavin was paid for with my money. Audrey stood up. I am not withdrawing this petition, and I am not giving you a single dime. You have less than 10 hours to sign those divorce papers. If you refuse, the legal gears will keep turning, and I will personally ensure that you are not only financially ruined, but completely destroyed in the corporate world. Everyone in your office will know exactly who you really are. Audrey picked up her phone. I am not forcing you to suffer, Gavin. You explicitly chose your own suffering the second you decided that Brittany was much more valuable than me, the woman who literally bankrolled your entire existence. Gavin could only stay slumped on the cold marble floor, feeling the crushing weight of every terrible decision he had ever made coming back to obliterate him. He knew he was utterly powerless. At that exact moment, his phone buzzed with a text from Mr. Caldwell. Mr. Gavin, ensure you sign the documents immediately. The secondary vehicle you use will be repossessed at exactly 9 a.m. tomorrow. This is your final warning. With hands shaking violently, Gavin reached for the expensive pen on the table, and with a soul-crushing heaviness signed every single page of the divorce petition Audrey had laid out for him. He was literally signing his own sentence to a life of poverty and destruction. Audrey watched him do it without a single flicker of emotion. The next morning at exactly 9 a.m., the massive Beverly Hills estate felt colder than usual. Even though the California sun was beaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows, a suffocating tension filled the air indoors. Audrey was fully prepared. Sitting in the formal dining room, she enjoyed a light, healthy breakfast, accompanied by Harper, who had come over strictly for moral support. In her hand, Audrey held the sleek folder containing the finalized divorce papers Gavin had signed the night before. Right on the dot, just as promised, a sleek, black corporate SUV pulled up to the main gate. Mr. Caldwell stepped out, flanked by two burly, no-nonsense private security contractors. They marched into the house with crisp, professional strides. They weren't there to negotiate. They were there to officially seize the property. Gavin, who had just woken up from a miserable, restless sleep on the living room sofa, jumped up in sheer panic. His pale face went completely ashen when he saw Mr. Caldwell flanked by Muscle. Mr. Caldwell, what are you doing here so early? Gavin asked, desperately trying to project the authority of a corporate director despite his wrinkled clothes and disheveled hair. Mr. Caldwell didn't even acknowledge Gavin's greeting. He walked straight past him to Audrey, offered a highly respectful bow, and received the folder she handed him. Thank you, Miss Audrey. Everything is now legally binding. The formal repossession of the property will commence immediately. Mr. Caldwell then pivoted to face Gavin, his expression completely unreadable and stone-cold. Mr. Gavin, pursuant to the legally binding agreement you signed, this estate is the exclusive corporate asset of Miss Audrey's holding company. Your authorized use period for this residence has been officially terminated. I am legally instructing you to pack your personal belongings and vacate the premises immediately. You have exactly 1 hour. Gavin was paralyzed. 1 hour? Are you out of your mind? I live here. This is my house. I strongly suggest you review the real estate asset assignment clause, Mr. Gavin. Mr. Caldwell replied smoothly, handing Gavin a thick stack of legal documents. This property has never belonged to you. You merely held residential privileges during the tenure of the marriage. And according to the documents you personally signed last night, that marriage is effectively over. If you refuse to comply, we will be forced to request the immediate assistance of the Beverly Hills Police Department to escort you off the premises for trespassing. And I assure you, a public police escort will permanently destroy whatever is left of your professional reputation. The threat of a very public, humiliating police eviction was enough to silence Gavin. He knew that if the cops showed up with flashing lights, his absolute ruin would become the juiciest gossip among the high society circles he had tried so desperately to infiltrate. He looked over at Audrey, silently begging for a shred of mercy, but she just stared back at him with total emptiness. As the chaotic reality set in, the front doorbell rang aggressively. It was Barbara. She barged in, uninvited, her face flushed red with a mix of fury and sheer exhaustion. She hadn't slept a wink the night before, terrified that the luxury SUV she used to flex on her neighbors was going to be towed away. Furthermore, that morning her Lifeline wire transfer had completely failed. Gavin, what the hell is going on here? Why is Mr. Caldwell in the house? Audrey, you better explain to me right now why Gavin's transfer bounced. Barbara shrieked, storming toward Audrey and completely ignoring the towering security guard standing by. Audrey looked dead at her mother-in-law. For years, Audrey had strictly avoided any direct confrontation with this woman out of politeness, but there was absolutely no reason to hold back anymore. Good morning, Barbara, Audrey greeted her. her voice smooth but piercingly sharp. "I suggest you ask your son about the actual reality of his financial situation. And the reason the transfer failed is because that money belongs entirely to me and I have officially cut off the supply." Barbara was struck dumb. Her wide eyes slowly turned toward Gavin. "Gavin! What is she saying? Gavin, do not tell me you have been lying to me this whole time." Gavin, whose spirit was already entirely broken, could only hang his head in absolute shame. "I'm sorry, Mom. Audrey is right. Everything, literally everything is hers. The cars, the mansion, the money in the bank. None of it belongs to me." Barbara felt her knees buckle. The glorious symbol of status she had weaponized for years, the very status she used to look down on everyone else, including Audrey, was nothing but a colossal, pathetic lie. Barbara's fiery rage instantly melted into repulsive, groveling desperation. She whipped her head back toward Audrey. "Audrey, please, sweetheart, I am begging you, don't throw us out. I am so sorry. I swear to God I will never compare you to those other women again. I promise I will treat you right. I need this house, honey. I have absolutely nowhere else to go." Barbara dropped to her knees on the expensive imported rug, a pitiful display that sharply contrasted with her usual sky-high arrogance. Audrey didn't even flinch. She stood up and looked down at Barbara, who was now sobbing hysterically on the floor. "If you truly respected me as a daughter-in-law, you never would have demanded that I secretly bankroll a billionaire lifestyle that your son couldn't actually afford. And you certainly never would have turned a blind eye while your son cheated on me using my own money. This isn't about forgiveness anymore, Barbara. This is about consequences. This estate is legally mine and both of you need to get out. Right now." Mr. Caldwell signaled the private security guards. "Please monitor them closely while they pack their personal items. Ensure they do not attempt to remove any corporate assets or valuables from the property." Gavin, who had fully accepted his catastrophic defeat, numbly began stuffing a few cheap suits and basic clothes into a duffel bag. Barbara kept sobbing, pleading, and resisting, but her hysterics were totally useless. In exactly 1 hour, under the icy glare of Audrey and the strict, unyielding supervision of Mr. Caldwell, Gavin, and Barbara were physically escorted out of the sprawling Beverly Hills mansion that had for so long been the ultimate symbol of their fake power. Outside the towering iron gates, Gavin just stood rigidly on the sidewalk. His luxury car had already been repossessed. He and his mother were now forced to stand on the curb and wait for an Uber X. Two incredibly pathetic figures standing in the shadow of the estate they once claimed as their own kingdom. Barbara couldn't stop verbally attacking Gavin, her voice hoarse from screaming. "This is all your fault. Why the hell did you have to go and cheat on her? Why couldn't you just keep your mouth shut and be honest with me?" "I don't know, Mom. I thought she was stupid. I thought she'd never find out," Gavin yelled. Back, completely frustrated. Finally, a scuffed-up Uber pulled up and took them straight back to Gavin's cramped, depressing little apartment. From a massive bay window on the second floor, Audrey watched the cheap car drive away. The eviction felt like the heavy curtain finally closing on a long, exhausting play of humiliation and deceit. Harper walked up and wrapped an arm around Audrey's shoulder. "You actually did it, Audrey. Are you finally free?" "Not quite yet," Audrey replied, her gaze fixed on the distance. "The deep cleaning here is done. But now I have to take out the rest of the trash. Brittany." Audrey knew exactly how a greedy opportunist like Brittany operated. The ambitious mistress wasn't just going to sit quietly after being dumped and saddled with massive debt. After successfully excising Gavin and Barbara from her life, Audrey spent the rest of the afternoon hyper-focused on erasing the absolute last traces of Gavin's financial footprint. With Mr. Caldwell's surgical precision, she made sure that not a single asset, no matter how small, slipped through the audit. Every single credit line was canceled, every premium subscription was terminated, and even his access to the ultra-exclusive country club paid for by the holding company was permanently revoked. However, the real explosive drama was unfolding across town. Brittany was now trapped in a rapidly deteriorating nightmare. After viciously cutting ties with the now destitute, Gavin Brittany had desperately tried to contact the manager of the Rodeo Drive boutique where she had bought the designer bag she paraded in front of Audrey. She begged for a payment extension, spinning a lie about a sudden bank fraud hold on her credit cards. Unfortunately for her, the boutique manager flat out refused. The exorbitant debt for that arrogant handbag was now solely Brittany's legal responsibility. She realized with terrifying clarity that Gavin had never actually paid a dime for it. He had simply swiped Audrey's corporate card, which was now dead. Brittany hadn't just lost a wealthy sugar daddy. She was now facing an aggressive lawsuit from a luxury fashion house if she didn't cough up the cash immediately. Panicking, Brittany tried calling Gavin dozens of times, but he never picked up. Gavin, who was currently crammed into a tiny apartment with a wailing Barbara, was far too busy drowning in his new reality of absolute poverty to even think about dealing with Brittany's demands. Trapped and vibrating with rage, Brittany decided to take extreme measures. She convinced herself that Gavin and Audrey had actually conspired together to trap her. Brittany hunted down Gavin's actual address and showed up unannounced at his apartment building. When she banged on the door, she was greeted by a confused and thoroughly exhausted Barbara. "Who the hell are you, Barbara?" snapped, her eyes puffy and bloodshot from crying. Barbara, who always envisioned herself as royalty in high society, felt an instant wave of disgust looking at the overly dressed, aggressive woman standing in the doorway of her son's pathetic apartment. "I'm Brittany." "Where the hell is Gavin?" Brittany demanded, sneering openly at the dingy hallway, which was clearly a million miles away from luxury. "He's inside," Barbara replied coldly. "And who are you exactly? His mistress. What do you want? He's severely depressed right now. I'm here to force him to take responsibility." Brittany shoved past the older woman, finding Gavin lying motionless on the cheap couch. "Gavin, get up right now. You have to pay off my debt." "What debt? I don't have a single dollar left, Brittany," Gavin screamed, launching himself off the sofa. "Go ask my psycho wife. She took literally everything." Brittany stormed closer, her eyes blazing with pure hatred. "I don't give a damn about your wife. You promised me you were buying that bag. Now I am being threatened with a lawsuit from the boutique for a massive bill you were supposed to cover. I know you have money stashed somewhere. You need to pay me right this second." Gavin let out a harsh, cynical laugh. "Stashed money. Brittany, I can't even afford a cup of coffee right now. I got thrown out of my own damn house this morning. My mother and I are living in literal hell because of Audrey, and you're in here screaming at me over some overpriced stupid bag." The screaming match escalated into a full-blown war. Barbara watched the whole thing unfold in sheer horror. She quickly realized that Brittany wasn't the high-class, elegant woman Gavin had likely pitched her as, but a desperate, money-hungry gold digger entirely obsessed with luxury. Barbara felt a sickening wave of regret wash over her. She had actually defended a trashy woman like Brittany while constantly tearing down Audrey. Meanwhile, high up in a sleek corporate skyscraper, Audrey was sitting in a state-of-the-art boardroom with Mr. Caldwell and his elite legal team. Audrey wasn't just settling for divorcing a parasitic husband. She was going to make damn sure Brittany didn't walk away unscathed. "Mr. Caldwell, I want you to immediately file a massive countersuit on behalf of the holding company," Audrey instructed smoothly. "Sue Brittany for gross defamation, unauthorized exploitation of corporate assets, and outright fraud." She paraded around a luxury bag purchased with stolen corporate funds and publicly proudly declared it was a gift from her wealthy lover. "That constitutes significant reputational damage to my firm." Mr. Caldwell raised an eyebrow, genuinely impressed by Audrey's ruthless business acumen. "We can certainly build the defamation suit entirely around her derogatory public statements towards you, Miss Audrey. We can also attach the corporate fraud charges, arguing that she was fully aware of the illicit nature of the funds but willfully utilized them for personal enrichment and public deception." "Exactly. I want Brittany to feel the exact same sheer financial terror I felt having my money stolen. I want her to face the lawsuit from the boutique and the lawsuit from my corporation simultaneously," Audrey said, her voice ice cold. "And make absolutely sure this lawsuit catches the media's attention. I want the entire world to know that I'm not just divorcing a parasitic husband. I am systematically exterminating the parasites that attach themselves to him." Mr. Caldwell's legal strike team moved with terrifying speed. Within mere hours, an official subpoena and a massive civil lawsuit filed under Audrey's company name were hand-delivered by process servers directly to Brittany's address. When Brittany received those heavy official legal documents, right in the middle of her screaming match with Gavin, her blood ran cold. She wasn't just being sued by a fashion boutique anymore. She was now being sued by Audrey's billion-dollar corporation for astronomical damages. She finally realized that Audrey hadn't just been sitting back taking it. Audrey was launching a highly structured, utterly lethal counteroffensive. "Look at this, Gavin. Your wife is an absolute psychopath. She is suing me," Brittany screamed, throwing the thick stack of legal papers right at Gavin's face. Gavin scrambled to read the first page, and his terror multiplied tenfold. "Audrey wants to annihilate all of us. She is not going to stop until we are completely destroyed." Gavin was right back at square one, consumed by panic. He knew the absolute only way to stop Audrey's warpath was to somehow try and beg for mercy again, but he had zero leverage. He was totally alone, dead broke, stripped of his reputation, and currently trapped in a room with a mother who despised him and a mistress who was suing him. Back in her high-rise office, Audrey received the prompt update from Mr. Caldwell, confirming that Brittany had been served. Audrey smiled. It wasn't a cruel smile of malice, but a deeply satisfied smile of pure justice. Audrey had fully initiated the total cleanup plan, a purging of the deceit, betrayal, and blinding arrogance that had infected her life. She was taking her dignity back step by step, utilizing the immense intelligence and financial firepower they never even bothered to respect. After successfully launching the countersuit against Brittany, Audrey, and Mr., Caldwell seamlessly transitioned into the final phase of the total cleanup operation, securing the public narrative and managing corporate reputation. Audrey was fully aware that her explosive separation from Gavin, especially following the dramatic repossession of the Beverly Hills estate, was inevitably going to become the hottest, juiciest gossip among Los Angeles high society and the broader corporate world. Rather than sitting back and allowing Gavin and Barbara to spin pathetic lies and play the victims, Audrey decided to sever the rumors at the root by dropping a tactical nuke of undeniable fact. That very morning, Audrey organized a sudden, highly exclusive press conference at a prestigious downtown hotel. She invited only a select group of top-tier business journalists, financial reporters, and media outlets who maintained excellent relationships with Mr. Caldwell's firm, the very firm that had until now served as the impenetrable shield for Audrey's vast empire. Audrey did not appear on camera herself. It was Mr. Caldwell who took the podium commanding the room. With his signature calm yet fiercely authoritative tone, Mr. Caldwell commenced the briefing. He didn't just casually announce the legal separation and pending divorce between his client Audrey and Gavin. He dropped an industry-shaking bombshell. Today, acting in my capacity as lead counsel and interim liaison for Omni Asset Holdings, a premier parent corporation controlling a vast portfolio of strategic real estate and top-tier subsidiaries in the tech and investment sectors, I am officially announcing that Miss Audrey is permanently assuming the role of majority owner and full-time chief executive officer of this conglomerate. Mr. Caldwell declared his gaze, sweeping the room of reporters. A wave of shocked murmurs immediately swept through the press pool. Omni Asset Holdings was a heavyweight name behind closed doors, highly respected among elite Wall Street investors and venture capitalists. Mr. Caldwell raised a hand to silence the room and continued smoothly. Until this point, Miss Audrey has preferred to manage her extensive portfolio in strict confidentiality to preserve her personal privacy. However, in light of ongoing legal proceedings and to swiftly prevent the dissemination of any malicious misinformation, Miss Audrey has deemed it absolutely necessary to clarify the public record. We wish to confirm that every single major asset, including the primary Beverly Hills residence, the fleet of luxury vehicles, and all operational corporate funds previously utilized by Mr. Gavin, originated entirely and exclusively from Miss Audrey's capital managed safely within our corporate structure. Mr. Gavin merely operated under the title of a standard employee with a baseline salary and held absolutely no equity or ownership stakes whatsoever. Mr. Caldwell then signaled to a screen, displaying heavily redacted but legally undeniable documents, detailing the exact corporate hierarchy and the ironclad prenuptial agreement Gavin had signed. The documents explicitly proved the total separation of Audrey's monumental assets from Gavin's personal property. These records unequivocally prove that Mr. Gavin's long-standing public claims of being a self-made tycoon and the owner of this immense fortune were a complete and total fabrication. Mr. Caldwell finished smoothly. The revelation hit the corporate and social worlds like a seismic shockwave. The news spread like wildfire across the internet. Audrey, who had previously been dismissed by high society snobs as just another quiet old-money housewife, was suddenly revealed to be an absolute titan, a ruthless magnate actively controlling billions in assets. Gavin, who had spent years strutting around country clubs posing as a hotshot director, was instantly outed as nothing more than a glorified, kept man living entirely off his wife's allowance. In his depressing little apartment, Gavin and Barbara were watching the live broadcast on a tiny, outdated TV screen. Gavin's face turned the color of ash as he watched Mr. Caldwell systematically destroy his life on national television. "Impossible! She can't be this ruthless!" Gavin screamed, hurling the TV remote across the room where it shattered against the wall. "She just publicly executed me in front of the entire city." Barbara collapsed onto the cheap sofa, clutching her chest. "Oh my God, Gavin. So, all this time, I was actually humiliating her using her own money. I was bragging to all my friends about a son who was nothing more than a borrowed employee. How am I ever supposed to show my face in my hometown again?" Barbara wailed hysterically. She wasn't crying because they lost the mansion. She was mourning the absolute permanent death of her fake social prestige. Meanwhile, Brittany was also glued to the exact same broadcast. She was sitting in a cheap, run-down diner desperately trying to calm her nerves after being served with the massive lawsuit, listening to Mr. Caldwell's chilling revelation. Brittany felt violently nauseous. She finally realized the sheer catastrophic magnitude of her stupidity. She hadn't just slept with a broke fraud, she had publicly humiliated and taunted a literal billionaire magnate, aggressively flexing a designer bag that was now burying her in crippling debt. The bad news for Brittany only accelerated. The lawsuit from the luxury boutique had already been fast-tracked into the court system. Even worse, the devastating defamation lawsuit filed by Omni Asset Holdings had immediately become the center of a massive media circus. Brittany, who had spent years carefully curating a pristine image as a high-society luxury lifestyle influencer, was now aggressively branded across gossip blogs and TikTok as the broke scammer mistress with the unpaid bag. Over at the corporate office, where Gavin was still technically employed as a director thanks to Mr. Caldwell strategically delaying his formal termination to streamline the divorce proceedings, every single person was whispering about him. Overnight, all the respect he demanded evaporated. The looks from his colleagues were a humiliating cocktail of mockery, disgust, and profound pity. Gavin realized with crushing clarity that he hadn't just lost his bank account. He had lost the entire foundation of his identity. He was the ultimate joke of his own workplace. Audrey finally broke her silence with a single highly calculated post on her professional social media accounts. It was a stunning, elegant portrait of her, sitting powerfully behind the CEO desk of Omni Asset Holdings, accompanied by a very brief, lethal caption. Justice isn't just served in a courtroom. It is served when the undeniable truth is finally brought into the light. The public support for Audrey exploded exponentially. She was universally praised as the ultimate symbol of intelligent female empowerment, a woman who was not only incredibly patient, but terrifyingly brilliant in business, and vicious in defending her dignity. Meanwhile, Gavin and Brittany were drowning in a suffocating tsunami of social karma. They were fighting a brutal two-front war, the total annihilation of their public reputations and the looming threat of complete financial collapse in civil court. Audrey had flawlessly won the war of public opinion, a victory that tasted far sweeter to her than merely reclaiming her material wealth. The massive wave of press generated by Mr. Caldwell's conference triggered instantaneous, brutal social karma for Gavin and Brittany. The backlash wasn't just contained to the corporate elite. It dominated mainstream media and every major social networking platform. Audrey's name trended as an icon for smart, empowered women everywhere, while Gavin was aggressively labeled as a pathetic suit-wearing parasite. Endless memes, viral threads, and exposes about the fake tycoon who lived off his wife's credit card flooded the internet, with Gavin and Brittany's faces plastered everywhere as the ultimate punchlines. Trapped in his claustrophobic apartment, Gavin didn't dare step outside. He took an indefinite leave of absence from his job because every time he even checked his work email, he was met with unbearable whispers and thinly veiled insults from his peers. His mother, Barbara, also refused to leave the apartment. She, who had spent her entire adult life aggressively bragging about her successful son and their elite status, now had to face the horrifying reality of being the most humiliating piece of gossip among her socialite friends back in the Midwest. "Gavin, I simply cannot live like this," Barbara wailed, smacking her son's arm in frustration. "Every single one of my friends is laughing behind my back. They're saying, we are literally beggars who got kicked out of our own mansion. Why did you have to lie to me about the money? Why did you have to go and cheat on a woman like Audrey with trash like Brittany?" Gavin, who used to be so arrogant and overflowing with toxic confidence, was now a hollow, shattered shell of a man. He finally snapped. "Why didn't you ever just support me for who I was?" Mom Gavin screamed back. "You were the one who was constantly demanding that I make more money, buy a bigger house and drive a flashier car. You were the one who always compared Audrey to the other wives in your stupid circle. I built this entire fake life because I just wanted you to finally be proud of me." The toxic conflict between mother and son reached a critical mass. All the dirty lies that had been carefully swept under a rug of fake luxury finally exploded into bitter regret, vicious accusations, and genuine, inescapable despair. Barbara blamed Gavin for his pathetic inability to secure the bag, and Gavin blamed his mother for implanting the toxic, blinding ambition that ultimately destroyed him. Meanwhile, Brittany was facing a significantly darker reality. She hadn't just lost her lucrative social media presence. Her accounts were being absolutely carpet-bombed by thousands of users, mocking her as the broke mistress with the unpaid purse. She lost every single one of her brand sponsorships overnight because her public image was totally radioactive. Even worse, she was literally fighting for her life in court against two massive entities simultaneously. The luxury boutique was out for blood, and far more terrifyingly, she was facing the brutal defamation and corporate asset exploitation lawsuit from Audrey's Omni Asset Holdings. Following Audrey's explicit orders, Mr. Caldwell strategically dragged out the actual divorce proceedings, but hit the gas pedal entirely on the lawsuit against Brittany. It was a brilliantly sadistic move by Audrey. She wanted Gavin to sit front row and watch the absolute financial destruction of Brittany, the woman he had chosen over his wife before his own divorce sentence was officially handed down. Pushed entirely to the brink, a desperate Brittany finally swallowed whatever pride she had left and showed up alone at Mr. Caldwell's prestigious downtown law firm. She begged the front desk to let her see Audrey. "I need to speak with Miss Audrey. Please, I just want to apologize to her." Brittany pleaded with the receptionist, sobbing crocodile tears. But she was immediately blocked by the firm's security team. Eventually, Mr. Caldwell stepped out into the lobby to address her directly. "Miss Audrey absolutely refuses to see you, Miss Brittany. She has zero personal business left to discuss with you. Please, Mr. Caldwell, tell her I'll publicly retract every single statement. I'll give the bag back, I'll pawn it, I'm begging you. Just tell her to drop the corporate lawsuit. I am going to lose literally everything I have." Brittany wailed, causing a scene. Mr. Caldwell coolly handed Brittany a crisp, formal document. "Miss Brittany, Miss Audrey couldn't care less about your handbag. She only cares about accountability. This is your second formal legal notice. Miss Audrey has instructed us to pursue maximum financial damages for the reputational harm inflicted upon her corporation and her personal character, an incredibly substantial sum. If you do not provide payment or reach a legally binding settlement within 48 hours, we will formally petition the court to seize and liquidate your personal assets, including your luxury apartment and your vehicle to cover the damages." The very real threat of total asset seizure made Brittany tremble violently. She finally understood that she had picked a fight with an unstoppable, merciless financial juggernaut. Audrey wasn't playing games. Audrey wanted Brittany to experience complete and utter ruin, just as Audrey had been forced to experience public humiliation. When Gavin eventually heard through a mutual acquaintance about Brittany's catastrophic legal situation, he felt physically sick. He realized that it wasn't just him who was going down. Brittany, the woman he foolishly thought was his escape, was about to be stripped of everything she owned. Gavin's regret deepened into a bottomless pit, not because he genuinely felt bad for breaking Audrey's heart, but because he realized he had colossally backed the wrong horse. Audrey, meanwhile, remained utterly unbothered. She poured all her energy into her role as the public CEO of Omni Asset Holdings, attending high-stakes board meetings and closing multi-million-dollar acquisitions. She proved to the public and her shareholders that she was entirely unfazed by cheap domestic drama. Her reputation as a formidable, hyper-intelligent business titan was solidified in stone. Audrey didn't even need to get her own hands dirty to exact revenge. She simply weaponized the legal system and the cold, hard truth to surgically purge the venom that had been quietly poisoning her life. The day of the final divorce hearing between Audrey and Gavin finally arrived. The courtroom in downtown Los Angeles was absolutely packed with media reporters and members of the public, eager to witness the climax of the drama, the vast majority drawn in by the explosive revelations regarding Audrey's billionaire status. Audrey walked into the courtroom with her head held incredibly high, flanked by Mr. Caldwell and Harper. She looked flawless, radiating the undeniable aura of a wildly successful CEO, not a broken victim of infidelity. In the opposite corner of the room sat Gavin completely alone. His face was gaunt, his eyes were sunken with dark circles, and the suit he was wearing, though one of his former expensive tailored pieces, now looked wrinkled, faded, and pathetic. He no longer possessed the confident swagger of a corporate director. He just looked like a man who had been thoroughly crushed by the universe. Surprisingly, Barbara was also in the courtroom. However, she didn't sit anywhere near her son. She hid in the very back row with her head bowed deeply, desperately trying to shield her face from the aggressive flashes of the paparazzi cameras. Barbara had truly hit rock bottom socially. She could no longer afford the luxury of arrogance. She had only come to witness with her own eyes the final nail in the coffin of the fake luxury she had enjoyed for so long. The judge slammed the gavel and the session commenced. Mr. Caldwell stepped forward methodically, presenting the overwhelming evidence supporting the divorce, the airtight prenuptial agreement, and the most damning evidence of all the meticulous wire transfer logs and corporate deeds, proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that Gavin's entire luxurious lifestyle had been completely bankrolled by Audrey. Mr. Caldwell also submitted the signed eviction notice from the Beverly Hills property, which Gavin himself had legally authorized. The judge turned a stern eye toward Gavin, asking if he wished to formally present any objections or attempt to make a claim for marital assets. Gavin just slowly shook his head. Your Honor, Gavin spoke, his voice hoarse, trembling, and completely broken. I have no objections. I fully admit to all of my mistakes. I admit that I lied, I committed infidelity, and I deeply exploited my wife. I only ask for forgiveness. I realize now that I haven't just lost my wife. I have lost every shred of my honor. I do not deserve a single thing from Audrey. It was a staggering confession of total unconditional defeat. The once arrogant Gavin was completely pulverized. He looked over at Audrey, his eyes brimming with pathetic, useless regret. The judge then turned his attention to Audrey. Miss Audrey, do you wish to file any additional claims for financial damages or pursue further civil action regarding the infidelity and financial deceit committed by your husband? Audrey stood up gracefully. She spoke with a voice that was crystal clear and commanding, yet totally devoid of any messy emotion. Your Honor, I do not want a single cent of his money. I already have everything I need. My sole objective in filing this petition was to establish the undeniable truth and clear my good name. I wanted to prove to the world that a woman should never be underestimated, marginalized, or used, no matter how rich or powerful her husband pretends to be. I request that this dissolution of marriage be finalized immediately, and that Gavin receive absolutely nothing from my corporate or personal assets. Audrey then turned her piercing gaze directly onto Gavin. I forgive you, Gavin, but I absolutely refuse to let you escape the consequences of your own actions. I hope you learn a very valuable lesson from your own ruin. The judge's final ruling was read aloud. Audrey and Gavin were officially legally divorced. 100% of the assets remained the exclusive property of Audrey's holding company, strictly enforcing the prenuptial agreement. Gavin walked out of that courtroom with zero status, zero money, and zero honor. As Gavin stumbled out into the hallway, Barbara approached him, but she didn't open her arms to hug him. She just stared at him with empty, completely dead eyes filled with an ocean of disappointment. You really destroyed our entire lives, Barbara whispered, her voice laced with pure, unadulterated bitterness. I don't blame Audrey for any of this. I blame you. Because of your unbelievable stupidity and your greed, we lost absolutely everything. Now I have to go back to my miserable little town with nothing. You are the sole reason for this destruction. Barbara turned her back on him and walked away, abandoning Gavin to stand completely alone, as a swarm of ruthless journalists began shouting questions at him, demanding a comment. On the other side of the legal battlefield, Brittany also faced her ultimate judgment. The combined crushing weight of the lawsuits from the Rodeo Drive boutique and Audrey's Omni asset holdings completely obliterated her. In civil court, the judge ruled that Brittany had knowingly utilized funds she knew were illicit and had committed malicious public defamation. The court ordered Brittany to pay an astronomical sum in damages to Audrey's corporation. Because Brittany was totally broke and couldn't pay the court, aggressively seized and liquidated almost every single asset she had to her name, including her luxury high-rise apartment and her leased car. The exact same designer bag she had so arrogantly flaunted in Audrey's face was ultimately confiscated by the state and auctioned off to cover a fraction of her massive debt. Brittany lost absolutely everything she valued and was permanently branded as a scammer and a fraud in the public eye. After the court adjourned, Audrey met up with Harper and Mr. Caldwell in the lobby. It's finally over, Audrey said, letting out a long, genuine sigh of relief. Gavin is completely out of my life, and the parasites have been exterminated. Mr. Caldwell offered a rare warm smile. Congratulations, Miss Audrey. You are without a doubt the strongest and most brilliant woman I have ever had the absolute honor to serve. Audrey looked up at the California sky through the glass ceiling. She didn't feel an explosive, dramatic happiness. Instead, she felt an incredibly deep, grounding sense of peace. She had successfully reclaimed her dignity, ruthlessly cleaned up her life, and proved to everyone that she wasn't just a patient, passive wife, but the undisputed master of her own destiny. Once the divorce was officially in the rearview mirror, Audrey didn't waste a single second. She threw herself entirely into Omni Asset Holdings. Under her brilliant, unyielding leadership, the conglomerate went public, and its valuations skyrocketed. She no longer hid from the public eye. She stepped out of the shadows and confidently claimed her rightful throne at the very pinnacle of the corporate world. She became a highly sought-after role model, frequently featured on the covers of top-tier business magazines. In her interviews, she shared her incredible story of success, never directly mentioning Gavin or Brittany by name, but always emphasizing the vital importance of integrity, ironclad boundaries, and having the courage to strike back when your rights are trampled upon. Audrey's world was now overflowing with massive, ambitious projects, billion-dollar acquisitions, and an inner circle of people who genuinely respected her razor-sharp mind and her character, including Harper and Mr. Caldwell. Her luxurious lifestyle was now truly authentically hers, free from the toxic lies and the exhausting demands of those who only wanted to exploit her. Audrey found a genuine, untouchable peace and happiness, a crown far more valuable than any marital status. Meanwhile, the reality for Gavin and Barbara was a million miles away from anything resembling luxury. After being violently evicted, Gavin desperately tried to secure another corporate job. However, his permanently stained reputation as a deceitful, parasitic fraud closed the doors to every single reputable firm in the state. He was ultimately forced to take grueling, dead-end, minimum-wage jobs just to keep the lights on. Barbara, brutally forced to abandon her fake high-society life, finally moved back to her small Rust Belt hometown. Her health rapidly deteriorated both physically and mentally. They lived in constant, grinding hardship, totally stripped of the energy to ever be arrogant again. One mundane evening, while eating a cheap microwave dinner, Gavin accidentally caught a glimpse of Audrey's face on the tiny TV screen in the break room. She was being interviewed by a major national network, being honored as the most influential female entrepreneur of the year. Gavin stared at the screen, his eyes dead, finally comprehending just how colossally stupid he had been. He had callously thrown away a priceless diamond for a cheap, dull piece of broken glass. He hadn't just lost a beautiful, incredibly loyal wife. He had permanently severed himself from a source of legitimate, limitless power. Brittany didn't fare any better. After every single one of her assets was seized by the court to pay off her massive lawsuit judgments, she was forced to file for total bankruptcy. She completely lost her platform as an influencer forever, blacklisted by brands and labeled as a public fraud. No wealthy man ever looked her way again. She was forced to work grueling entry-level jobs just to rebuild her life from absolute zero, constantly living under the suffocating shadow of crippling debt and severe social stigma. The luxury handbag she had once bragged about with such blinding arrogance became the ultimate poetic symbol of the brutal karma that hunted her down. This story ends with the vivid image of Audrey smiling radiantly from the very summit of her monumental achievements. She hadn't just won a vicious legal war, she had conquered herself. She definitively proved that a patient, highly intelligent woman possesses a terrifying, authentic power that can never be bought with money nor stolen by betrayal. She had flawlessly cleaned the toxicity from her life, exterminated the parasites, and ultimately crowned herself the undisputed queen of her own empire. Never underestimate the quiet patience and the lethal intelligence of a woman who has been pushed too far. Betrayal and lies are nothing more than fragile illusions that sooner or later will be completely obliterated by the truth. In this life, unbreakable integrity and genuine honor are the absolute most valuable assets any of us can possess, and they must be protected at all costs.